and welcome to the sci-fi and fantasy edition of the Incoming Video Podcast, the show that looks back at the week's sci-fi and fantasy miniature releases. This is episode 18, which looks back at the miniature releases for week ending the 5th of February 2010, and as always, I'm your host Neil Shuck. Well, for once actually, this week has been a little bit quieter when it comes down to the number of releases around, so it's been a lot easier to choose a top 10. There's still been a lot of high quality stuff around though, so I'm not sure whether you'll totally agree with my order of things, but I hope you'll agree that this week we've got 10 pretty good sets of figures for you. So let's kick off at number 10, and we have Scibor Miniatures. So yes, you can see this is going to be a dwarf. However, I couldn't bring myself to put this any higher because, to be frank, it's quite disturbing. This is a preview of their Valentine's figure. It's called Make Love Not War, and the imagery, I think you'll agree, is just disturbing. I think enough said about this particular model. Okay, let's tiptoe away and leave them to it. Number 9, and it's Otherworld Miniatures, a company that's well known for producing fantasy miniatures. They've come out with what has in the past been a problematic figure. This is a rust monster, except you're not allowed to call them rust monsters, because if you do, whoever these days owns Dungeons and Dragons will come after you because it's a trademark infringement. But you take one look at the beast and you know it's a rust monster, and it's a really good rust monster as well. So here it is for every GM who wants some form of antidote to the party fighter's latest +5 armour of invincibility, and a pretty nice sculpt too. Number 8, and a model from a company that's splitting wargamers. This is Soda Pop Miniatures, and this is a preview of their latest miniature, Kenobo Monk of Gamandi. And I'm not quite sure where this quite fits in with Soda Pop. I got the impression they're originally going to be all anime girlies, but this is absolutely not. It's a big anime sci-fi monk with a truly Final Fantasy sized weapon. Typical anime style, completely over the top, and is, I think, one of those figures you've got to either love or hate. It's nicely sculpted though, which at least makes it a very interesting figure to look at. Number 7, and we have the latest previews of the great-coated sci-fi miniature releases from Wargames Factory. We now get to see a couple of the heavy weapons troopers, who have a guy with a flamer, guy with a grenade launcher. There's also a heavy machine gun available as well. I'm still liking the look of these a lot. Several people have been very critical of the anatomy, saying that the legs are too short. I suppose looking at it, it's possible. From these figures, it doesn't seem as pronounced as, say, the problems with some of the initial pig iron miniatures. But again, I'm just loving this Jinro style, and I think for a lot of people these are going to be a highly anticipated plastic box set when Wargames Factory finally release them. On to number 6, and a new, possibly slightly controversial release from Heresy. I was saying last week how much I loved this set of Balding sci-fi miniatures in greatcoats. And here we have another one. This is a Sentry, who seems in the process of lighting either a cigarette or a cigar, something like that. And this is, I suppose, where the controversy might come in, as smoking is very non-PC these days. But that aside, I think it's a really nice miniature. Sometimes you can never have enough miniatures just standing around not doing a lot. So it's nice to have a miniature that is unusual. Into the top 5, and we have a preview of Reaper's new Red Dragon, and this looks to be a fantastic figure. Really looking forward to seeing this coming out. No word yet on price, and to be fair, it would have been nice to have another miniature by the side of it so we can get some feel of scale. All that said, it looks pretty awesome, doesn't it? A very nice rendering of a dragon for Reaper's new Pathfinder range. I'm sure this will be a big seller. Dragons are always pretty popular, aren't they? Great stuff. Number 4, and we're starting looking at a new set of miniatures being released by Antenna City's Workshop. They've been working on various figures for some time for their sci-fi range. This is a female security guard. I think you'll agree this is a seriously nice looking figure. My only criticism might possibly be a slightly overlarge weapon, if you'll pardon the expression, but otherwise I think she's a pretty beautiful sculpt. And hopefully they'll be producing several of these in different poses. Nice stuff. Okay, into the top 3, and at number 3 we have a new release from Darks and Designs for their alternate World War II range. This is a Soviet bomb dog team. some ways a fairly depressing release. I mean, I know a lot of people are dog lovers and would hate to think about what these dogs are actually trying to do. But again, putting all the unpleasantness aside for a second, they're actually really nice sculpts. And it's good to see that Darkson are continuing in their high standard of sculpting for their AW2 range. Number 2, a set of figures that just missed last week's top 10, basically due to the fact that I heard about them late. These are a new set of figures from Hasslefree for their Twilight range, and these are the Dalgon. These figures essentially completes that race now, so you can have 3 different warbands for 3 different races for the game. Something that really impresses me with Twilight is that the actual mythos is virtually unique. All the sculpting and creatures are not at all reliant on the standard fantasy mythos of orcs, elves, dwarves, that sort of thing. Completely different. If they reminded me of anything, the first thing I think of is something like Dark Crystal. And even then, that's only kind of really in passing. But I've been really impressed with the sculpts I've seen for this particular game. It's another one of those games that, well, the more I see it, the more I think, this may actually be quite good. I'm getting more and more tempted to give this a try with a small group of figures. But I'd be pretty interested in hearing what other people think about it. So that's my number 2. So my number 1 for this week. And yeah, it's Smart Max, a new release for their Smog range. Now, this gentleman we've seen before, but he's not my number 1. This is the Reverend Dudley. We saw his figure a few weeks ago. However, as part of the release, we find out this week that as part of his character background, the coffin that he is carrying contains the remains of his wife. His wife is my number 1. Here may I present to you Mrs. Dudley. Now, isn't this a stunning figure? Obviously, this is sculpted in, I suppose, what would be in film terms, wet for dry. But you can see that poor Mrs. Dudley obviously met her end by drowning, and it's portrayed as if she was still underwater. And I just think this is a fantastic sculpt. Now, I know these figures aren't cheap. Oh yeah, they're 54mm, and they're in excess of €20 a piece. So to call them gaming figures, although they are produced as gaming figures, is fairly borderline. But they are just so good. Some of the best figures I've seen around. Again, stunning stuff from Smart Max. Every time I see a new release, they're as good, if not better, than what's come before. Their Smog range of VSF is just fantastic. Brilliant stuff. Well deserved number 1. And that's all we've got time for this week. Well, I hope you've seen something you like. Before I go, I just want to say a big thank you to Bill at the Miniatures page, Zach at Tabletop Gaming News. Without the gentleman's efforts, this podcast simply wouldn't be possible. Thanks very much for watching this latest edition. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've seen something that's caught your eye. What's left to say is take care, happy gaming, and I'll see you next week. Bye.